Um, for those who are new here, my name is Stacy, and I am an operation and systems strategist, and I help nonprofit organizations as well as social enterprises, so nonprofits and for-profits. So today we're going to talk about how just handing your team a task and expecting deliverables, what it does is it's not always a good thing to just expect deliverables when they have no decision-making power. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today and why that is the quickest way to make yourself the leader, the bottleneck in the organization, and ensure that your team is not successful, which causes issues. And it boils down to systems and processes that you have in place for your team to ensure that they're doing well. Because if your team is always waiting on you, if every decision has to run through your inbox, then it things are going to stall when you're not available. Imagine you go out of town or you're in a meeting, an important meeting, and your team members can't access you. That's what I mean that it's going to stall. So I want you to sit with this a little bit and think about how you're the bottleneck in the organization and you're making it very difficult for your organization to actually grow or move forward. Even if it's a successful organization, sometimes you start acting like the bottleneck in the organization and don't see the issue. So I digress. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And again, you end up being the bottleneck, right? So that's the part of leadership that nobody talks about and wants to acknowledge because a lot of people are stuck and just wanting to be the boss and wanting to have the title or wanting to do it all by themselves. Um, because it feels good, right? Or it feels right. It feels like the right thing to do. And oftentimes you're told, oh, go delegate, but no one taught you how to design the decision path for delegation, right? So you're not able to delegate effectively because your team, once you delegate to them, now there needs to be a level of accountability and consistency with your team members. So you need to know how to design that decision path, okay? Because oftentimes people see delegation as just handing tasks off, but keeping all the authority. Okay. And I know some people that are going to see the replay understand very well what I'm talking about because delegating does not mean you keep all the authority. You have to be able to provide your team members decision-making authority. So, which means your team has a job to do and not to decide. That's what happened when you do that. And it's not delegation at this point. You're hiring yes man, yes women, yes people, okay? And that's basically distributing the level of burnout you're experiencing because nobody is really able to take actions the way they're supposed to. So what happens in this case when nobody has decision-making authority, what it looks like is you being buried in approvals, right? Your staff being a bit disengaged because let's be really clear here. Imagine that you're at a job and they're just handing you tasks to do, and you feel like you're just there and being babysat and micromanaged. Like, think about if it was you, how would you feel? You would feel uninterested to do the work. You would feel like this person is just bossing you around. They're not really trusting you to do the work. They hired you to do the work, but they're doing it themselves. So what happens is your staff becomes disengaged, right? Progress slows down because now they're not as efficient as they should be because you want to do everything, right? You ask them to write something, but you want your finger and your own voice to be in there. There's no branding kit or anything, but everything they do is incorrect because it's not yours. So progress slows down and you're the reason. And there are systems that you can put in place to ensure that it is seamless. And what happens is you're able to proceed, the team is able to do the work in a very consistent way, but you need a system in place. Okay. So if you're not looking to distribute the burnout within the organization, you need to sit down and think about it of how you're going to ensure it doesn't happen. Because oftentimes you are the reason if you are the leader of the organization and people are still experiencing these issues. So you have to come to terms of, okay, how are we going to fix it? Because if you don't start thinking about how to fix it, then the problem is just going to proliferate and just remain an issue. So I said it. Now, before we get too deep into this, we're going to talk a few numbers of different things that have been said in the nonprofit industry and leaders and stuff like that. Especially, I work a lot with nonprofits, not only for profits. There were 61% of nonprofit leaders that actually said that decision delays are one of the biggest barriers to execution. So imagine if you're a leader of an organization, you have a title, whatever, you're supposed to do your job, but you have to wait on the executive director or your supervisor to approve a decision, but the decision was just going to Amazon and purchasing a $20, whatever it was, for an outreach event. That's an issue. So sometimes there are some decisions that do not require you being there, and that's something that the leaders of the organization are going to have to sit down and figure out. Now, which of these decisions can I hand off to somebody else so we're not having certain bottlenecks within the organization? Because if the person knows their job, they know what they can and cannot purchase, and they actually have a matrix, a system in place to allow them to make these decisions without your approval, then it makes it easier for them and removes you from having to do these redundant tasks, right? Because then a $25 purchase, a $100 purchase should not require you to be approving and stamping those all the time. There are ways and you should be able to set systems up to make that a thing. There was another report by the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and they stated that only 38% of staff at nonprofits feel empowered to make decisions within their role. Now, if you think about it, think about how many people have jobs within nonprofits. And if the majority of, well, it's not a majority, it's only 38%, but that's a big number, right? So 38% of them feel like they are disempowered, but they're working for a nonprofit, and nonprofits tell you they're trying to empower people, but your staff feel disempowered to make decisions. Why is that? That's the question that I feel nonprofits should be asking themselves a little bit more often. Why is your staff feeling disempowered when it comes to making decisions within their role? Why is it that you hire people that you feel like you have to babysit? Why is it that you're not giving these folks reins on certain decisions? Because just like when if you're a parent, you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. When your child is learning something new, you have to let them sometimes learn the hard way. Like my son, I was teaching him how to ride a bike this summer. I let him fall, figure it out. Get back up, pedal, figure it out. Because there's some lessons like when the person has the power to make certain decisions, even if they fail, there's a lesson behind it. And sometimes you have to let them make decisions within their roles to empower them. Because when you empower your team members and people you are supervising, you are helping them become more empowered in their role, and they're going to help grow the organization. They're not going to be disengaged. They're not going to resent the organization. And a lot of times, if you see that companies, organizations have a retention problem, is because the team doesn't feel appreciated. And giving them a level of decision-making authority will make a difference because you cannot scale a mission if your team is operating like robots, right? You're going to need thinkers. You're going to need people that have ownership, and you're going to have distributed clarity because everybody on the team needs to have a level of clarity that sustains the organization. You're going to need people that know what they're doing. Like, even if they have to make a decision that doesn't align, like I was saying, but they made the mistake, they learned. But if they're not able to make these decisions, then it's not it's not good. So you need to think about how you're going to get your team to become a team of thinkers, people that are empowered to make decisions, because you do not want to be part of that statistic where it's only 38% of staff at nonprofits that feel empowered to make decisions. Because then, if only 38% of them feel empowered, think about, because then that's what that leaves us with 62%. 62% of them feel like they're just there and staring at you and, oh, I don't know how to do this. Let me ask my supervisor. Why is that? So you need to start thinking about systems and make like any matrix to decision matrix to help your team have that level of empowerment to make decisions within their role. Now, something I see over and over in my strategy sessions and intensives, right, is you got five people in your organization, but only one person has a green light, can green light a decision. That's the executive director. Why? Because if the executive director or the CEO, either title, that's the only person that can green light a decision. Again, if that person's out of town, what happens? Do they give that decision-making power to somebody else? Or is everything just stopping that week? Those are things I want you to think about. Now, imagine that same organization, only five people in the organization, right? You say you're a collaborative organization, you value collaboration, you value honesty, you value transparency, but everything still routes back to you. It always goes back to you. We need a $20 this. You have to approve it. You have to give us a card, right? You need to get supplies, or somebody has a question about administration or about how the organization can partner with them. Oh, I don't know. Let me direct you to the executive director. Nobody actually knows what's supposed to happen, or they don't have the decision-making power because you hold all of that. You have the authority and you're not letting people do what they do best, right? You're open to ideas, but only your plan moves forward. And that's the other thing. You'll be in meetings listening to people, asking them for their ideas, letting them shoot their shot. Like everybody's getting excited, but when push comes to shove, only your plan actually moves forward. Why is that? That's because there's a lack of systems in place to ensure that people understand how their ideas, how they have the power to do certain things in the organization. It's like a vacuum. It's like this power only belongs to you. The authority only belongs to you, and everybody on your team is just there to stare at you and look at you and just carry your purse for you. And we're not doing that, okay? So if you've created a system where everybody has to wait because they've been trained that their judgment doesn't matter, then it's going to lead you to have a team that really doesn't hold their weight. Because when you do that, you're really telling them that their judgment and their ideas do not matter. And that's something I want you to go back and look at. Now, the other way that this shows up is that every time somebody has something that like they want to do, they feel like they have to come to you and ask you for permission. Now, I remember when I was a project director at a nonprofit, a lot of the team members like questions to me because I am a very, my face don't hide nothing. Like I will tell you, my face don't hide nothing, right? Like questions like, should we submit this report? You do this report every week. You know you have to do this report. Or even like questions about events. What are we supposed to do with this? You know what to do with this. Like you have to be able to empower them to answer the questions themselves sometimes. So sometimes it's the way you interact with your team. Like they feel like they need hand holding, but you should like send it back to them too. Give it back to them. Let them make that decision because they need to train you. You need to speak to them so they understand their judgment matters, but you also need to train them so they can trust their own judgment. Because whether you like it or not, a lot of people are not trusting their own judgment and questioning themselves, and there's a lack of empowerment. So you need to do better as a leader. I know like some people feel like it's a lot, like we babysitting these days, but like you need to hand back this power and get people to think. Ask them questions to get them to think and realize that they are just as they are responsible for the decisions they make and give them that decision making authority so they understand that they have that capacity. Because if they do not have the capacity, that means it all falls on you. There is a reason you're burnt out. There is a reason that you go home and you're frustrated and you want to quit this thing every day. So you have to make sure that your team has the system and you're also speaking life into your team and they understand that they have the authority to make certain decisions. But you have to decide which of these decisions you're ready to let go of because you have to let go of certain things that don't require your finger on them all the time. Because the worst thing that happens in these situations is that you start blaming your team for being slow, unmotivated, and unclear. Like you can't blame them for what you don't allow them to do. And then I see some leaders also blaming their board members. Who picked them? Like, that's a question I'm going to ask you. Who picked these people? You picked them. So, how about you get them on board or get them off board? Like when I say get them off board, you better check your bylaws and see how they need to exit and find somebody else. So all of these things are things that you need to take accountability for and responsibility for because you cannot blame your team for being slow, unmotivated, and unclear if you did not put systems in place to ensure that they are not that way. Because you built this. You're the bottleneck, and you're going to have to take responsibility for some of these things that are occurring on your team. Okay? So that's my 2 cents about it. And if you're live, please let me know you're live. Let me know where you're watching from so this algorithm can do its thing. The fact that I'm not going live every day, Facebook doesn't like me right now. It's okay. Hashtag live, people. Let me know you're here. So you need to truly be about collaboration and truly be about team building if that's what you want. If you want to have a team of leaders, of thinkers, of people that will help the organization or company grow, you need to treat your team members that way and stop being that bottleneck or person in the middle that's responsible for everything and that wants to do everything. Because if you're burnt out, like I said before on a post, and everybody, there was a Facebook group that kicked me out of it because I told people burnout is a choice, and I mean it. Burnout is a choice because if you are not ready to delegate or hand off certain things with a system in place to ensure people can pick it up, you're going to be burnt out. So if you think about it, you are burnt out because you choose to be burnt out. Now you can go fight air about this because I'm not fighting with you about it. I don't want to hear your 2 cents about it. I'm so sorry. I appreciate you. I'm just not doing that today. So burnout is a choice, and you have to make the choice whether or not you want to empower people on your team to be better, or do you want to keep them in the level where you are the bottleneck. One thing I'll say is I worked with a nonprofit earlier this year and sometime last year that had a team of 5, right? Every piece of content, every caption, every flyer had to go through the executive director. And what was happening is they were drowning in social media. Like it was not consistent. It just didn't make sense. Even though they actually had 3 amazing interns, right? So we spent some time refining their standard operating procedures, their SOPs, helping them create a brand voice guidance, a brand kit, and building an approval matrix, right? like where does the what go in the process, and setting content tiers by risk level. Okay. So what type of content is important, like which one is high, medium, whatnot, and giving the communication team the autonomy for 80% of the work. Because what happens then is if they have autonomy on it, they will test things. Things may not look good all the time, but they will start testing things and they will start seeing what looks good, what doesn't, but give them autonomy for a lot of the work. Now, only some of the things will need to get approved, and that's okay. Because what happened with that organization, the interns actually started doing so well. Engagement doubled. Like when I look at the analytics for their page, I'm amazed. Like their videos are getting so many views. The executive director got his time back and the team feels like they're trusted. So that's what happens when you stop being the system and you start building the system, because you have to build a system for you to stop being the system, because you're not the system. You're running a company, you're running an organization. So you need to have systems in place to ensure that things are running smoothly. Okay. So I'm going to show you how I solve this inside my precision strategy sessions. Now, this is the quickest way to work with me with impactful results. So what we do is we walk through a simple but powerful three-part model that I call the decision path architecture, right? So in the precision strategy session, especially if my client has issues with systems, we clarify the core workflows, we assign roles and authority, and we codify with standard operating procedures. So, and in the precision strategy session, one thing I like doing is sharing certain prompts with my clients to ensure that they're able to draft their SOPs in a way that works for them using AI, because my thing is I use tools and technology to my benefit and it makes sense. Teamwork makes the business work. Yes, it does, Ricky. Thank you. Now, you honestly, you don't need a bigger team all the time. You just need a stronger system. So that's where we are. And that's the hill I'm going to be on today. And that's the hill I'm going to stay on. So, like I said, build a system and choose what you want, whether it's burnout or whether it's a team that makes sense, whether it's a team of thinkers and decision makers, right? Because that's all there is to it. You can actually pick. Now, for the precision strategy session, I know I already have three scheduled next week and one this week. So I should have two spots left for the rest of quarter four. All right, not quarter four, quarter three. We're in third quarter. Oh, Jesus. So, yeah, the year is ending so fast. So go ahead and book yours. If you click the link in the comments, you should be able to book yours. And before I leave, I always share some tangible actions that you can do today, especially to help your company or organization. I want you to audit the last 5 tasks that you assigned. Especially if you're a leader in your organization, think about the last 5 tasks that you assigned to your team members. And I want you to ask yourself, did you tell them what to do and how to decide? Because the one thing is you can tell them what to do, right? But how do they make a decision if they have choices? Do they know that? Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to ask yourself. The second thing I want you to ask yourself, if you went offline for 3 days, could your team move forward? Okay, ask yourself that question. That's the second question I want you to ask yourself. And the last question I want you to ask yourself is the problem the person or the process? Because oftentimes people will blame the team member, right? But not think about whether if it's the team member that's the problem or does the process suck? Because sometimes the process just is non-existent and makes no sense, right? So you need to think, is it the person or the process that's the problem? Because if it's the process that's the problem, then the person the process needs to be corrected. There needs to be a process in place, and the person needs to receive training on that and a level of clarity. If the person is the problem, then there needs to be some type of conversation with the person, re-explaining the process and ensuring that the person is on board, right? So you need to figure out what the problem actually is. Is it the person or the process? And then after you go through what you need to go through with the person, then maybe document and make sure they're following the process, walk them through it, make sure they're doing it. And if they continue being a problem, then you should know how to handle your company or organization. I'm not going to say what to do, but you can figure whatever your procedure is. And then go into your project management tool, whatever you're using for project management. I don't, Asana, Monday.com, Airtable, whatever it is. And I want you to add an owner and decision authority for every deliverable. So if there's a deliverable in your project management tool, right, a task or whatnot, who who is the owner of this and who has decision authority. If it's none, don't put anything. If there's somebody that needs to approve something, write it down because they need to know who has the decision authority for it. If it's them, put user or whatever. Let them know who has decision authority for this deliverable, because these just doing that will change everything, because it puts people in a position where they don't have to worry about who has the decision making authority. If it's them, hand it to them. If it's you, let them know they have to ask you, because some decisions do need um, approval from the leadership, because some of them may need to go through the board for approval. Whatever it is, just make sure you clarify what that is and you spell out when decision authority needs to go elsewhere. Okay. And I know some people are going to need to hear this, and I say this with love, but saying your team isn't ready or they're not detail oriented or you've been burnt before is not an excuse that you need to be using. You need to realize that complaining about burnout and refusing to release the control is going to keep you where you are. Okay? Being able to let go is actually a leadership skill. So you can't claim to be building leaders and empowering people if you don't let your people lead. And you let your people lead by releasing control over certain things. Now, if there is a problem around releasing control, that's a deeper problem that I can't fix. I'm not a therapist. I can't help you with that. But you have to go within and start thinking about how to release control on certain things and allowing leaders in your organization to thrive, because you being a bottleneck in your company and your organization is hurting you more than you know. And if you do not build the systems to make sure that your organization or company is succeeding, then that's on you. Okay. So if that's you and you're tired of being the glue that's holding the company or organization together, the precision strategy session is where we fix that. We can definitely talk about how to work on um, the different skills and systems that are needed for your organization. It's $597. It's 90 minutes. You leave with a roadmap and the recording of the session and decision-making structures that you can implement immediately. And remember, there are only 2 spots left for the end of the quarter before we head to quarter 4, because then I already have 3 more scheduled next week, and I want to make sure that everybody is getting the help that they need. And yeah, let's do this. But if you have any questions, definitely drop them in the comments. And if you're watching the replay on YouTube, definitely ask your questions in the comments as well. And check the link in my bio. Thank you, everybody, for catching this. And I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please answer, because then I'm going to answer any questions that I see here before I head down to make lunch for the little one. My 10-year-old stayed home today. All right, y'all. Anyways, have a good one and thank you.